So the prophet who says prophet needs to lose the fear of death, basically. In devarim 18, Deuteronomy 16 to 18, chapter 18, verses 16 to 18, in accordance with everything you asked of God your God at Mount Horeb on the day of the assemblage, saying, I prefer not to continue to hear the voice of God my God and not to see this great fire anymore, that I not die. And God said to me, they've done well in what they've spoken. I will authorize a prophet for them among their brothers like you. I'll place my words in his mouth, and he'll speak to them all that I command him. So they were afraid of death. Okay, so a prophet cannot be afraid of death. In ACA, adult children of alcoholics or dysfunctional families, they have some great literature, which I read. And it says, it's never my responsibility to listen to unwise counsel, follow the crowd, be 100% perfect, retain an unfair relationship, be anyone but exactly who I am, meekly let life pass me by, do something I can't really do, put up with unpleasant people, submit to overbearing conditions, conform to unreasonable demands, bear the burden of another's misbehavior, endure my own negative thoughts, feel guilty toward my inner desires. And then in a 12-step meeting, which I had been in for 9 months, I was learning about how I was, becoming unwilling to, based on the literature that I just read, I was thinking about how I was unwilling to self-destruct by enabling abuse and unaccounted for or repeated transgressions and violations. In other words, to tolerate, my life, but on the other hand, on the one hand, to tolerate for my own sake, to find a way to tolerate my life for my own sake, but on the other hand, I will not deny or make excuses for the occurrences of outright disrespect or derogatory words or someone who betrays my trust or and I will not participate in, foster, or permit it. I felt like I'm unwilling to invest in someone who's unable to meet my needs or wants. In other words, if I'm anyway not meeting my own needs and wants, and I'm meeting your needs and wants, but you are unable to meet my needs and wants, it doesn't make sense. The energy that can go to someone instead who can meet my needs and wants. Additionally, regarding abuse, it's still abuse even if they only did it because they're also a victim. Unhealed, irresponsible, immature. Abusive people are not my project. So, I'm allowed to have different goals, incompatible. It could be because me and the other person, and they're unwilling to, or unable, it's because to meet my needs and wants, is because we have different goals or incompatible personalities or conflicting values and interests. And in terms of progress, I realized that I was able to move slowly. I did an hour of exercise. It was a slow yoga, or just mindful movement. And I hadn't exercised for a year. I wrote this a few months ago. I wrote a new affirmations page. I was healing from the deep misalignments, the voids, the shells of the wounds, and facing trust issues, identity issues, authority issues, and triggers, when I'm getting interrupted and interrupting, I try to count as 12 seconds pauses, or when someone is withholding information from me, it comes across controlling my choices and preventing me from having agency to make an informed decision. And it seems manipulative to make me think I'm even able to have options when in reality it's coercion, and there should be no coercion. So, because there's too many people, and I came too late. I feel like I'm still able to change my mind. I'm allowed to do what I want. I'm allowed to, I left this library, workshop, there's options. So I didn't have to go. I was trying to force myself to go, but I didn't go. There was this art thing at a library, and I didn't go because I felt like if I would go, I would not be able to be comfortable. So I decided not to go, and that was a big progress for me. So I want to share Afsa Rosette. She says, investment in someone disrupts patterns, which costs identity, and demanding a person shifts their story to weave you into what was once theirs and only theirs. And most people don't want to admit how terrifying that is, that someone now has power over your narrative. And when someone leaves, they take a part of your imaginary future with them, and that's why so many people keep relationships at the surface level consistency. They might be present or affectionate, even loyal, but they're never really opening the gates of real inclusion, because once you're included, you might be dangerous to them. And Malcolm Fraser says, today, what was once protecting you was destroying your intimacy. That very armor and shield that, was created to protect your heart is the same that now prevents it from being felt and from being touched. And so instead of defending, be honest about what you feel. Here's my shame. Be curious as to how your behavior hurt someone and ask what you can do different next time. Because, for example, your partner's expressing his or her pain. It doesn't mean they're rejecting you. Your partner's expressing her heart. It doesn't mean that you're being abandoned. Your partner's expressing a request. It doesn't mean you're unworthy. And so this is the work of conscious love, not to further shame the defense, but to outgrow it and to recognize I'm not that little kid anymore. I don't need to fight to be safe. I can stand here open breathing and let myself be seen. And then there's Shivan Jiran on Instagram, SHIVAN When you forget they call it like the goddessness or your divinity, you fall into either the good girl illusion, that you try to shrink yourself into others' perceptions to be good for them, or the constantly triggered one, like the bad one, the angry, rejected, betrayed, isolated, misunderstood. So you try to be like an angel, or you feel like a devil, like a demon. In her goddess element, she's the source of love, and giving her love is like offering heat to the sun. So you admire it, you let her light elevate you and nurture you, you let her warmth burn the ego-based illusions. So at that point, you don't try to be good for others, and you don't let them turn you bad. You just be good for yourself and share your goodness with the world. Mark Waldman says the brain is actually like hairy kind of networks. Like the networks are like hairs sticking out. It's not like a congealed fat, the mush, the way that they like to say. And we have the emotional network, which goes to the motivation network. It's a bunch of networks, to the imagination network, to the salience network, to the doing network, to awareness. So the SN, the salience network, and the DN, which is the doing network, and the hippocampus together make the learning network. And they all overlap. And the conscious planning and decision-making takes place in the overlap between the DN and the SN. So that's the doing network and the salience network. And so it's more like networks than just thinking of it as a mush of places. I want to show you the picture. Oops, like that. I don't know if you could see it. Each of these different networks in the brain. Okay, continuing. Catharine Pittman talks about the amygdala in the brain. And she says that that the amygdala reacts unconsciously in order to keep us safe and to survive. What we see consciously had to go to the back of the brain and be interpreted first. Reflexes go to the spine, not the brain. But here, the amygdala actually is receiving directly information for whatever might be a threat. Fright was a way to stay alive, and it learns not from lectures or books, but very quickly from experiences about what's dangerous. After a car accident, believes car passenger seat is not safe. It remembers cues to avoid repetition. Like the girl was attacked while Rolling Stone song was on. She got panicky when she heard the song a different time. And it's informed by ancestry. For example, the readiness to become, afraid of a little spider or an animal, versus like actually something that did something to you. Re-experiencing, but in a safe way without danger, re-experiencing the triggers in a safe way without danger, without reacting can be healing. And we then get to watch how the amygdala did have an urge to fight or dread or be afraid with our physical heart and feeling changing, since we know that there's nothing to be afraid of and we haven't made sense of the information yet, which could cloud, interpretation in a cortical way, the cortical networks, the brain, the cortex. But that's not a bug. That's just a clump of hair in the shower. Or that's the humming of a motel fridge, not an air raid alarm, from 5 miles away for a veteran. We can see that the fright, flight, freeze response, or also the fawn, that helps with taking an exam, for example, but it could in fact interfere. It is anticipating where, it makes us want to not get into it, but the anxiety will stop once we're actually in this situation because there's no actual threat. Sometimes we have to get into it because it's only anticipatory anxiety. The more sleep or REM sleep you have, the less activated the amygdala gets. Doing an action when the amygdala is activated will help it feel better because it's trying to make us do something. Like you go for a half-hour walk before you give a presentation. She says it could really help. Regular exercise also helps to keep the amygdala less reactive. Now we're going to go to the cortex. So this is a different this is the relationship from a different angle in terms of, we would say, the fear. So not the fear, but like the issues. And not the issues, but like when we don't feel safe. So cortex is the thinking part of the brain, the part that argues for logic and tells us not to be nervous. But the amygdala doesn't listen to reason or sense. It goes by appearances. And there's also much more connections from the amygdala into the cortex where it affects our thinking or makes thoughts not clear, but much more limited connections from the cortex to the amygdala. And the amygdala does, however, monitor the thoughts of the cortex as if it's like a television. So it's like, even if we think things that never happen, the amygdala could get scared. If the movies tell us things like people will be upset at us, or something threatening is happening, or that we'll be a bad person or get disapproval, and it does not distinguish between these thoughts and what's actually not occurring, that is just thoughts and not occurring. we aren't doing ourselves any favors by opening up certain channels that turn on the amygdala. Like a man says to his woman she can't go on his phone, and she perceives it as potentially indicating infidelity. She obsessively focuses, unable to look away from this, causing the amygdala to be reacting to those thoughts, making all of it much harder. We don't have to make things harder. This is what Catharine Pittman says. She says we can see our worries as invitation to start to make plans about things rather than seeing it as something to fear. So when we detect worry, it's like a one-time thing, because once we've been alerted of the potential threat, we're not supposed to continue worrying into a thought loop by repeating those thoughts. But we can't actually tell ourselves to stop thinking about something or worrying about it, because when we bring it up to not think about it, it activates it. So just to tell it to stop being activated obviously doesn't work. Instead, we need to replace. So it's not like about erasing the thoughts, it's focusing on something else, changing the channel. What we think does matter. It can activate the amygdala and create stress in the life from our thoughts, and that results in avoidant behavior, since we try to avoid where it seems like too much stress or fear. So we need to therefore reduce the scary thoughts we think. So this idea that trachta good, think good and it will be good, actually keeps us safe. And that is kind of like the theme today, because like what we talked about, what was once protecting you is destroying intimacy now, or trying to be the good girl or letting people make you bad is destroying intimacy. And thinking of the child and how like people are not our projects, we have to make our own progress. We're not supposed to self-destruct or be abused, and we have to face our fear of death, like in order to be able to have like the true vision come to us, and not to take on responsibilities and not to have wrong investment. So thinking good. So we're getting like safety, and we would say security here, because security is not investing in the wrong thing. You don't want an insecure investment. You don't want to invest and you get nothing out of it. You're gonna feel insecure. So we're really getting safety and security from thinking good, and from thinking from responsible thinking, really, from responsible, courageous, thinking. So we'll stop here. Okay, wishing you all the best. Bye.